But Hey there, it's John Nathan, and we'd like to report your therapy's showing. But so are some other people's, and we've been engaged in conversation for involving ourselves in the type of media, content, and conversation that's out in the world that shows the type of work that therapy can do, especially for people who have either been present with their behaviors, their comedy, their joke, their public persona that used to be allowed and was expected to be larger than life, Backstreet Boys, like harmonious, whatever is in the moment, whatever's clever. And now that there's a lens, there's an accountability, there's maturation in life, in people who have come through time and through space and through our televisions and through our radios to let us know, hey, this is who I was, this is how I was, and this is what I thought was funny. And here's who I am, here's where I stand, and here's what's going on today. And the person we feel that has highlighted that the most as the subject matter expert of what it's like to be who you are, to be very publicly who you are, and then to be very publicly concerned about the way that you want to progress, not the way other people think, not the way other people are saying, and to know that there's truth behind the thing that can get you to where you want to be as opposed to keeping you where you're at, is therapy and is self-awareness, self-acceptance. And the person we've seen highlight that in the way that aligns almost directly with how I feel that should have gone for myself is Miss Chelsea Handler. And we've recently seen her in an interview in Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard and Monica Padman. And, she has her new book out. There's so many, all of her books offer insight into, yeah, I'm funny, but also here's how I got there. And it's that Cardi B recognition of like, when you see what I've seen, you end up like this. And that's not the problem. The problem is that when people don't know where to go from that, or that there's other place to be, or that there's another version of yourself that you can engage with. So in the most recent interview with Miss Chelsea Handler, she's discussing the fact that, she started therapy as through COVID, like most people who were isolated, who needed to speak, who needed to talk, who needed to figure out what their next move was. And to know, like, she's very adamant about her use of drugs and alcohol and party and the need to fulfill that for others that was very prominent in her life. And how she has not faltered from her addictions that she did not realize are as addictions because they are habits, and that there's a very specific delineation in that, and that she's learned to walk that line. Not all of us can do that. I cannot do that. I cannot have a drink. I cannot have a line of cocaine. Those things turn into benders that are years long, decades long of damage and carnage and wreckage. And to know, like, many others, like the people in sobriety that I look up to who use that language, who understand that level of consequence, have a different perspective and a different version than someone like Miss Chelsea Handler, who understands that might be a problem for people, has seen it be a problem for people, has known it's been a problem for her in her life. But it was not, the level of detriment did not bring a convincing argument that she needed to get sober. Her argument that she is able to engage with, I think, is very individual, very necessary type of perspective is, hey, I can manage this. It's different than abstinence or avoidance. It's, I'm going to manage the thing that before it gets away from me, or perhaps it has already gotten away from me and I'm managing it now. However her perspective looks between her and her doctors and her therapists, the other aspect of that is that she does not allow that to rule her life, to run her life, to navigate and manage her life. She utilizes her own skills, her own tools, her writing, her journaling, her conversation, and she put a time limit on that. Not everybody knows that can be effective as well. She said 2 years of therapy. I don't need more therapy. I don't need someone telling me how to live. I need to apply the tools that they taught me through some life. And that's the type of learning that we focus on here in the conversation for me, because I can watch somebody do something, but if I don't know why I'm doing it, if I don't know how it's effective for me, then it's not going to be effective. And then I'm just wasting my time. And people with ADHD or with attention span issue or with anxiety don't want to wait for that shit. They don't want to look for that. They want the fix now. And when there's actionable steps that can be taken, tools that can be given, like meditation, like understanding boundaries, like setting boundaries for yourself, knowing the type of people who did not used to have boundaries, who are learning to set those boundaries while still very, very public in the eye. Like when she was Miss Chelsea Handler was one of our staples back in my 20s, many decades ago on the E channel. But and everything about her existence, and Chewy and her dogs and Chunk, and the show in and of itself, and her relationship to the public, and her drinking. Are you there? Are you there, vodka? It's me, Chelsea. And to know, like, I lived in that exact same lifestyle that was like, let me show you how self-deprecating I can be, how unrested I am, how unhydrated I am, how many I had last night, how long I was up. That type of projected lifestyle was so prominent in so many of our lives, with our gauchos and our chunky necklaces and our flip phones, that we did not bridge the understanding of emotional wreckage that comes with that. And you don't have to do anything about that other than recognize that it's a possibility and a potential to be there. Not, it didn't hit everybody the same way. But for somebody in such a public eye like Miss Chelsea Handler, who says, hey, this isn't destructive to my life, but I feel it. I feel the thing that is becoming overwhelming and needs to be managed. And however that looked for her, it definitely turned into a thing that, from her conversation, you can tell a lot of it came from vanity, her wanting to feel better, her wanting to look as well as she can for the longest amount of time, and her version of how to manage and navigate that, as opposed to trying to control or shift or alter whatever it was that was going on in her life. So I can't speak for what her turnaround was, other than what she's put out there. Her conversations with her elders who are wiser than her, Miss Jane Fonda, who brought an awareness to her that said, hey, I don't like that behavior from you in this setting, and let's clean that up. And she took the advice. She was open and willing. And part of the thing that she over discusses, that could be more discussed, is the fact that she was in the place to receive the information that someone told her, you might want to clean this act up. And I've been that person who's heard that 30 fucking years, but it wasn't received correctly to my brain. And then the second it was, the amount of work and growth and development that was able to unfold from understanding, because the information hit. It was like fitting a square into a circle wasn't right, but then all of a sudden when the patterns match, you know what to do. And learning that through therapy, learning that therapy gave the tools and skills. The other people who emphasized that to me were like the Duplass brothers in their book, Like Brothers, that says, you simply won't believe how much a couple of good tools from therapy will change your communication patterns and change your relationships, because you have something to do about the thing other than clash with it. And Miss Chelsea Handler brings that type of comedy, that type of intellect, that type of awareness to all of her work. But now that there's a sober component to it, that's not saying, hey, I'm not having fun. It's saying, I'm regulating and managing my own body. And I used to utilize chemicals and chemical relationship to do that. Whether it became an addiction problem for her or not that's none of our business, for one, but it's also not part of the narrative. The narrative is, I could have continued that way for so long because I'm a max effort individual. And I've learned to recognize that part of that max effort now includes hydration and rest and sleep and kindness to self. Because a lot of the people, especially in that industry, in comedy, in the self-deprecating era of the 2000s, that say, like, I'm going to tear myself down for all it's fucking worth, because for her, it was worth millions. And now not only to have to rebuild herself up from that, rebuild her relationship with herself, rebuild her relationship with the type of thinking and action steps like rest and water and boundaries, self-boundaries, self-enlightenment. That is more work than anybody wants to fucking do, especially anybody with that level of intelligence, because you should be able to do it immediately. That's the thing about therapy and people with high intellect, is that you get in there and then you're sitting for several years with some dumb bitch who doesn't know what they're fucking talking about, who doesn't know you as an individual, who's trying to give you all kinds of life lessons that you done already learned, but you don't know how to relate them to yourself, or how to bring the engagement of necessity to yourself, to bring that inertia and the motivation that says, I can do this in a different format. I had the same conversation when I very first got sober, and somebody had me do one of my special skills, and I thought, I've never done this sober before. It came out way better. It came out with no consequences that were negative for me, because I was engaged the entire time mentally. And there's been a lot of times where I'd had no negative consequences, and times where I was very inebriated, and there are times where the consequences were so damaging that I had to restart my life all over. And to know, like, that's something that I'm no longer willing to do, so that enforces my sobriety. But it also brings recognizing the people who may or may not have had issues with drugs and alcohol, who don't, like, as Miss Chelsea Handler says, she loves drugs and alcohol, But now she loves her relationship with how she can manage that, as opposed to utilizing that to manage herself through relationships. It's very different. It's very specific to each individual, but her putting that out there for us brings that type of conversation that says, hey, I can think like that. I can also have fun. I can also smoke pot and eat mushrooms and be manageable with my life and not be harming other people and not be harming myself in the process. And we understand, not everybody has a problem with alcohol. But if it does become harmful, or if it does overtake your sensibilities and your rationality, that there's something to be done for that, and that there's people out there doing the work to show that the work can be done. Even the most prolific comedians with the biggest party girl attitude and her Parker Posey reputation can still sit down with somebody and have the conversation that says, yeah, I did that and I can do that because I'm also a multimillionaire fucking comedian on television. But the rest of the world should not be encouraged to be living that way without understanding that there are tools and people and professionals to be able to talk to guide you to find your own way, to be able to have that type of conversation with yourself. And Miss Chelsea Handler putting herself out there in that version is something, a strong woman in her own field of comedy, of television, of late night television that we all used to set our clocks by. If y'all were watching The View, I was watching E, and knowing that conversation and that shift of perspective, her shift of business, her business mindset became more powerful for herself. She probably got that rubbed off from 50 Cent with that business mindset, because they were already moguls who became even more prominent in other fields of business that people don't even know about. Learning how to run networks, learning how to run, or not just run the network, but to be the prominent face of a network, being that poster child for all of us who put herself out there daily in such a self-deprecating way as humor, and still can come back, not only hold the respect, hold the room, and write the book on it. And so, Ms. Chelsea Handler, we're proud to report your therapy's showing. And we're also very grateful and privileged that you are willing to be showing and having that type of conversation about therapy, about what it's done for you, about what you're doing with it, and how it is a facet of your life, not the faucet of your existence that's fueling everything. Both things can be true. Both things can be effective. But each individual has their own way of addressing that and presenting it. And I think Miss Chelsea Handler's is one of the ways that aligns the most with mine, that says, hey, I can engage in certain activities and certain behaviors and still be able to utilize my mind, my intelligence, my humor, and my emotion, while not causing harm or damage or irreparable wreckage to my business, to my friends, to my friend group, to my family, to my life. And not all of us get that, Hollywood ending that says, I'm still a hot blonde with a bad body that's out there skiing nude and showing off the goods, because she can and she will and she should. But also, you can be and do those things without all of the damage that needs to get you there. We have these life lessons for us. We have those people who did this work for us. And if you're anything like me, you understand that you need to be able to do it yourself so that you know and you understand. But also, if you're anything like me, you recognize game recognizes game and intelligence recognizes intelligence. And you can look at situations and say, oh, if Miss Chelsea Handler is going to give herself 2 years of therapy and utilize those tools for the next 6 years of her life to be able to engage better with others, to be able to bring the emotional construct of her existence and have meaning and substance behind it instead of just humor and hope, that we can do that for ourselves as well. That it is worthy of our time to investigate what therapy might be able to do for you, what those tools from therapy might be able to do for you, instead of just relying on a person to show up every week. Or maybe you need both. Maybe you need one and the other. And figuring that out for ourselves, knowing that the leaders and the people that we respect and the words that they use that we respect and that we listen to are out there telling us that therapy is worth it. It's worth your time. It's worth your effort. It's worth your money. And the effort in and of itself is worth it. If you can't afford it, if you can't do it, then you could be doing something. And I'd highly recommend you pick up a book from Chelsea Handler that shows that how that type of unfolding, every one of her books has an arc of life lesson, of learning, of growth and development that's humorous, that is personalized, and that can be self-deprecating, but she always comes out on top in the end, because she's a bad bitch. And we are grateful for her enlightenment, for her presentation, and for her therapy showing. And I'm John Nathan, and this is Your Therapy's Showing. And we are so excited for our for this new year and this new concept of highlighting the people and the places and the shows and the entertainment that we're able to engage with. Someone like Miss Chelsea Handler is so important to me because she was a beacon in the 2010s of how to act, who to be, where to be, what to be listening to. And to know that like that has matured into something that we're still following. I still listen to, I still see, I still look, I saw her on Call Her Daddy, I saw her on Armchair Expert, I saw her doing her rounds, and I was like, I'm gonna watch all of these because I'm listening to what she's saying, and I agree, and I've experienced the exact same thing that says, I don't got to be a dud to be healthy. I don't got to be a dud to be wise within myself. I don't got to be the most boring person of the party, but I also don't have to be facilitating everyone else's entertainment every moment of my life. But even though that is something that restores my soul, that I can do that for myself. We can bring those lessons inward so that we're better at sharing them as we move forward in the world.